The candlelight flickers across a polished table in a Manhattan restaurant, casting shadows that seem to whisper secrets. A glass of red wine glints, its surface shimmering like a trap waiting to snap shut. Picture yourself there, raising that glass for a toast to love, to forever. But something feels wrong. A cold glance across the table. A note slipped into your hand. A voice inside you screams, "Don't drink." What would you do when the one you trust most might be hiding a knife behind their smile? Tonight, Emma faces that moment. A single choice to sip or to suspect will unravel her world. Her story isn't just about survival. It's about shattering lies, facing heartbreak, and finding the strength to rise. David, her husband, sits across from her, his eyes hiding a truth that could destroy them both. Will Emma trust her instincts or her heart? The answer begins now with a glass of wine and a warning. Emma sat in a velvet-lined booth at a Manhattan restaurant, the city's skyline glittering beyond the tall windows like a promise unkept. Her emerald dress caught the candlelight, its deep green a quiet nod to elegance, though her sharp eyes betrayed the mind of a former investigative journalist. At 35, Emma had set aside her career to support David's financial empire. But tonight, their 10th wedding anniversary felt hollow. A milestone overshadowed by unease. Her fingers brushed the napkin on her lap, her heart heavy with questions she couldn't voice. Across the table, David poured red wine into her glass, his movements precise, almost too perfect, like a scene rehearsed 100 times. His navy suit was flawless, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You look beautiful tonight." "Emma," he said, his voice smooth yet oddly distant, like an actor reading lines. Emma nodded, forcing a smile. "Thank you," she murmured, but her gaze lingered on his hand steady, too steady, as he set the bottle down. The restaurant hummed with jazz and soft clinks, its amber glow warming the roses and candles between them. Yet Emma felt a chill. She tried to bridge the gap. Remember our Napa trip, getting lost in the vineyard, laughing until dawn? Her voice softened, hopeful. David's lips twitched, but his eyes flicked to his phone. "Good times," he said, distracted, fingers swiping through messages. Emma's chest tightened. Where was the David who'd tucked love notes in her bag, who'd planned midnight adventures? This man was a stranger, his silence louder than the music. Her eyes caught his, searching for the husband she knew. But he glanced at the bar, where a woman in a black coat watched them, her stare lingering before she turned away. "Is something wrong, David?" Emma asked. Her voice calm but sharp, honed by years of chasing truth. He chuckled. "Too quick. Always overthinking, But the air grew heavy, and Emma's hand hovered near her wine glass, its red glow reflecting her doubt. This was supposed to be a celebration. So why did it feel like a stage set for betrayal? The soft clink of glasses and murmurs of other diners filled the Manhattan restaurant. But to Emma, the world narrowed to the table before her. The roses, the candles, the glass of red wine they mocked her, their warmth a cruel contrast to the cold knot in her chest. David sat across from her, his fingers tapping his phone, his eyes avoiding hers. The woman in the black coat at the bar lingered in Emma's peripheral vision, her presence like a shadow cast over the evening. Then, Lily, the server, approached with their appetizers. As she set a plate of bruschetta before Emma, her hand brushed Emma's, leaving behind a folded slip of paper. Emma's breath caught. She glanced at Lily, whose eyes held a fleeting urgency before she turned away. Emma unfolded the note under the table, her pulse hammering. Scrawled in smudged ink were 4 words: "Don't drink the wine. Danger." The world tilted. Emma's fingers trembled, the paper crumpling in her grip. She stared at the wine glass, its red liquid glinting like poison under the candlelight. Her heart had shattered. 10 years of love flashed through her mind, David's laughter on their wedding night, his promises whispered in quiet mornings, the way he'd held her through every storm. Had it all been a lie? Was the man she'd given everything to her trust, her dreams, her heart capable of this? "He wants me gone," The thought was a blade, slicing through her soul. Despair washed over her, cold and suffocating, as if the life she'd built with him was crumbling into ash. She blinked back tears, her chest tight with grief for a love that felt like a lie. But Emma was no stranger to hard truths. She had uncovered lies before, faced them down with a journalist's clarity. Is this what we've become? David, she whispered to herself, her voice swallowed by the jazz, stealing herself. Emma forced a smile, her hands steady as she raised her glass, mimicking a sip without touching her lips to it. This wine's lovely, she said, her voice sweet, but her eyes locked on David's. He watched her, his smile tight, his fingers still. Across the room, the woman at the bar shifted, her gaze never left their table. Emma set the glass down, her mind racing. She'd take it home, have it tested. The note burned in her palm, a spark in the darkness. Her heart ached, but a flicker of resolve began to stir. If David had betrayed her, she wouldn't crumble. She'd face him and whatever truth lay behind that glass. The Manhattan restaurant buzzed around Emma, but the noise faded to a dull hum as she clutched the crumpled note in her lap. Don't drink the wine. Danger. Her wine glass stood untouched, its red liquid a silent threat. Across the table, David's eyes flickered with something unease, maybe calculation. The woman in the black coat at the bar watched them. Her presence a weight Emma couldn't ignore. Her heart still ached. Raw from the betrayal etched in that note, 10 years of love-quiet mornings, shared dreams, whispered vows now felt like a cruel illusion. Emma's mind churned. She saw David's smile on their wedding day, felt his arms around her during sleepless nights. How could you do this? The question burned, her despair a heavy fog. But she was no stranger to pain. She'd faced it before, digging for truth in her journalist days. That spark of resolve, faint but growing, flickered in her chest. If you want to break me. David, you'll have to try harder. David raised his glass, his voice smooth but strained. To us. Emma, 10 years and more to come. His eyes locked on hers, expectant, as if waiting for her to drink. Emma's pulse raced, but she held his gaze, her journalist instincts sharpening. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction, with a deliberate, feigned clumsiness. Emma knocked her wine glass over. The red liquid spilled across the tablecloth, pooling like blood before dripping to the floor. Oh, David, I'm so sorry, she gasped, her voice sweet, her eyes never leaving his. The glass shattered, shards glinting in the candlelight. David's face tightened, a flash of panic betraying his calm facade. It's fine, he muttered, but his hand trembled as he reached for a napkin. Emma seized the moment. She grabbed his glass, the one she knew was safe, and raised it, pretending to take a sip. Let's share yours, she said, her smile a mask, her heart pounding. David's eyes widened, his breath catching. He knows, she thought, her resolve hardening. The man she'd loved was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd planned her end. Her sadness surged. You are my home, David, but she channeled it into fire. I won't let you win. In his panic, David snatched the reserve bottle from the table, pouring himself a fresh glass with unsteady hands. To us, he said, his voice cracking, and downed it in one gulp. Emma watched, her expression neutral, but inside she braced herself. She'd seen the woman at the bar shift, her gaze intense. Something was coming, and Emma was ready to face it. Moments later, David's face paled. He clutched his chest, sweat beading on his brow, and slumped forward. The restaurant erupted gasps, shouts, a server rushing over. Emma stood, her voice calm as she called for help. But her eyes were cold. She slipped her spilled glasses shards into her bag. Evidence for the lab. Her heart broke for the love she'd lost, but a new strength surged within her. You tried to destroy me, David, but I am still here. As paramedics swarmed, Emma's resolve solidified. This wasn't just survival. It was war, and she was ready to fight. The Manhattan restaurant dissolved into chaos as David slumped in his chair, his face ashen, sweat glistening on his brow. Glasses clinked. Voices rose in panic, and paramedics pushed through the crowd. Emma stood frozen, her heart a battlefield. The crumpled note, "Don't drink the wine," danger, burned in her pocket, a grim reminder of the truth she had barely begun to grasp. Her wine glass, now shattered on the floor, had held poison meant for her. Her and David, her husband of 10 years, was behind it. As paramedics lifted David onto a stretcher, Emma's mind spiraled. She saw him laughing on their honeymoon, his eyes bright with love, felt his hand in hers during quiet nights. Was it all a lie? The memories stung, each one a shard of glass in her chest. 10 years built on trust, on shared dreams now crumbled to dust. Despair clawed at her, a hollow ache that threatened to swallow her whole. "I gave you everything. David, how could you?" She wanted to scream, to collapse under the weight of betrayal, but Emma wasn't built to break. Her journalist instincts, honed by years of chasing truth, surged forward. "If you thought it'd fall, you underestimated me." That spark of resolve, kindled in the restaurant, now blazed. She slipped the broken glass shards into her bag, evidence for the love, and drove home, her hands steady on the wheel despite the storm inside. In David's home office, the air was heavy with secrets. Emma tore through drawers, her fingers brushing files and pens until she found a small metal box, hidden beneath a false bottom in his desk. A keypad lock gleamed under the lamplight. Her heart pounded, but she punched in David's birthday, a date she knew by heart. The lock clicked open. Inside was a USB drive and a vial of clear liquid. Unlabeled, cold to the touch. Emma's breath hitched. She plugged the USB into her laptop, and a grainy audio file began to play. David's voice, tense, filled the room. "She has to go. Cassandra. Her name's on the contracts. It's the last piece. If we don't, the organization will bury us." "A woman," Cassandra replied, her tone sharp. "I spiked the reserve bottle. 2, just in case. Don't screw this up." Emma sank to the floor. The USB clutched in her trembling hand. Her mind reeled. David wasn't just plotting her murder, he was a pawn in a larger game, forging her signature to launder billions for a criminal syndicate. And Cassandra, the woman at the bar, had miscalculated, poisoning the reserve bottle David drank from in his panic. The irony was bitter. His own trap had ensnared him. Tears stung Emma's eyes as she remembered their first dance. David's promises of forever. "You broke us." The grief was a tidal wave, but she let it crash, then stood taller. "You destroyed our love." "David," she whispered, her voice steel. "But ill destroy your lies." Her resolve solidified, a fire that wouldn't fade. She copied the audio, pocketed the vial, and vowed to expose them all. The man she had loved was gone. In his place was an enemy, and Emma was ready to fight. Emma stood in the dim glow of David's office, the metal box open before her, its secrets laid bare. The USB drive and vial of clear liquid sat on the desk, silent witnesses to a betrayal that still cut like a knife. The audio file's words echoed in her mind. David's voice, desperate, plotting her death with Cassandra. Cassandra's cold admission of spiking the reserve bottle, a mistake that had poisoned David instead. Her husband of 10 years, now lying in a hospital bed, wasn't just a traitor. He was a pawn in a criminal syndicate, using her name to launder billions. The weight of it pressed down, threatening to crush her. She sank into David's chair, her hands trembling. Memories flooded back their first apartment, cramped but warm with laughter. David's hand brushing hers as they danced under starlight. How did we end up here? The love she'd cherished for a decade was a lie, a fragile dream shattered by that cursed glass of wine. Despair clawed at her heart, a hollow ache for the life she'd lost. I trusted you, David. I gave you everything. Tears welled, but Emma wiped them away, her jaw tightening. She'd been a journalist once, unafraid of truth, no matter how brutal. That strength surged now, a fire kindled in the ashes of her grief. You broke my heart, but you won't break me. Emma acted swiftly. She copied the audio file to her laptop and slipped the vial and glass shards from the restaurant into a sealed bag. She needed proof, hard evidence to nail David and expose the woman at the bar. Cassandra, through her old contacts. Emma reached Rachel, her best friend and a sharp-eyed lawyer. "I need a lab to test these," Emma said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Rachel agreed, arranging for a private lab to analyze the wine residue and vial contents. "Stay safe, Em," Rachel warned. "This sounds bigger than David." 2 days later, the lab results came back. Emma met Rachel at a quiet Brooklyn cafe. The city's hum a distant pulse. The report was damning. Both the wine and the vial contained a high-dose sedative, enough to induce permanent coma. Emma's breath caught, the reality hitting like a punch. He really meant to kill me. Her heart ached, but she pushed it aside, her resolve a steel core. Rachel suggested another ally, Lily, the server from the restaurant. Emma tracked her down. Meeting at a nondescript diner, Lily's hands fidgeted as she spoke, her voice low. "I used to work financial investigations, not FBI. Just a private firm. I got too close to Cassandra once. Digging into her shell companies. She's a ghost. Emma, a pro at money laundering. David's just her puppet." Lily slid a USB across the table, loaded with files on Cassandra's network offshore accounts. Fake contracts, all tied to a syndicate moving billions. "I saw David that night," Lily added. "The way he watched you, I had to warn you." Emma's mind raced, piecing it together. The contracts David mentioned in the audio, they bore her name, forged to mask the syndicate's cash flow. She wasn't just a target, she was their scapegoat. The betrayal stung anew, but Emma channeled it into focus. "You used me, David. Now I'll use your mistakes against you." Back home, Emma and Rachel pored over Lily's files, cross-referencing them with the audio. They found a trail accounts linked to Cassandra, transactions funneled through David's firm, and documents with Emma's forged signature. Each discovery was a brick in the case they were building. Emma's journalist instincts roared to life every email. Every wire transfer, every lie was a weapon. She stood by her window, the New York skyline glittering like a challenge. The pain of David's betrayal lingered, a dull ache, but it no longer defined her. "I was your wife, David, but now I'm your reckoning." Emma's resolve was unbreakable. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was dismantling a web of deceit, and no one, not David, not Cassandra, would stand in her way. The truth was her blade, and she was ready to strike. The sterile hospital room smelled of antiseptic, its fluorescent lights harsh against the pale walls. David lay in the bed, his face drawn, an IV line snaking from his arm. Emma stood at the foot of the bed, her posture unyielding, clutching a folder, the USB drive, the vial of sedative, and the lab report, a damning arsenal of truth. Outside, New York's skyline pulsed, a city that never slept. Much like the fire now burning in Emma's chest, her heart still carried the weight of betrayal. 10 years of love-stolen moments, shared laughter, promises of forever had been reduced to lies. She saw David smile from their wedding day, felt his warmth in quiet nights. How could you throw it all away? The grief was a dull ache, a shadow of the despair that had nearly drowned her when she'd found the note, the poisoned wine. But Emma had clawed her way out, her journalist instincts forging pain into purpose. "You tried to erase me, David. Now you'll face me." She stepped forward, her voice low, cutting like a blade. "You didn't just want me dead, David. You used my name, forged it to hide Cassandra's crimes." She opened the folder, placing the USB vial and lab report on the tray beside him. The wine, the reserve bottle, this vial all laced with enough sedative to kill, but Cassandra slipped up. "And you drank her mistake." David's eyes widened, his breath shallow. "Emma, I had no choice," he rasped, his voice weak but desperate. "The organization, they'd kill me if I didn't comply. Cassandra, she planned it all." His hands gripped the bedsheet, pleading. Emma's gaze didn't waver. His words stirred memories, his laughter, His touch, but they were ghosts, not enough to sway her. You broke us. Her sadness lingered, a faint echo, but her resolve was iron. You had a choice. David, you chose her, you chose them, and you lost. She leaned closer, her voice steady, each word a verdict. The FBI has everything: the audio, the lab results, Cassandra's files from Lily, your forged contracts, your money laundering. It's over. David's face crumpled, his eyes darting, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Emma straightened, the folder now empty, her burden lifted. You were my husband, she said, her tone softening, not with forgiveness but with finality. But you picked the wrong enemy. She turned, her heels clicking on the linoleum, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the city's lights stretched before her, a canvas of possibilities. A flicker of regret touched her for the love they'd lost, the years she'd given, but it faded, replaced by a fierce clarity. I'm free. Shed sent the evidence to the FBI through Rachel. Her lawyer friend, David would face trial for attempted murder and money laundering. Cassandra was now a fugitive, her empire unraveling. Emma's steps were lighter as she left the hospital, her heart scarred but unbroken. The man Shed loved was gone, but Shed reclaimed her strength. This isn't the end, she thought, the skyline gleaming like a promise. It's my beginning. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a force, ready to write her own story. One truth at a time. Emma stood on the balcony of her new apartment, the New York skyline a tapestry of light against the night, the city pulsed below, alive with possibility. In her hand, a journal lay open, a single line scrawled in her steady script. I didn't just survive. I was reborn. The ache of David's betrayal lingered 10 years of love. Now ashes, but it no longer held her captive. She thought of him, now in custody, facing charges of attempted murder and money laundering. Cassandra, the puppeteer behind the poisoned wine, was a fugitive, her syndicate unraveling under FBI scrutiny. Emma had sent the evidence, the USB, the vial, the lab report through Rachel, ensuring justice, but her victory wasn't just their downfall. It was her rise. Shed launched a podcast, anonymous but raw, sharing her story of betrayal and survival. Thousands of women listened, their messages flooding her inbox, stories of courage, of breaking free. Emma's heart, once shattered, now beat with purpose. The sadness of lost love, David's laughter. Their shared dreams was a quiet scar, but her resolve was a beacon. I turned pain into power. Emma's story teaches us that instinct is a flame in the dark. She didn't just outsmart David, she conquered her fear, her grief. Her journey reminds us no one gets to write your ending. Not a lover's betrayal, not a poisoned glass. Pick up the pen, shape your own story. What will you choose when you face your own glass of pain? I admire Emma's strength, not just surviving, but thriving. She turned heartbreak into a rallying cry, showing us that our inner voice is our greatest weapon. Listen to it. It will guide you home. Emma closed her journal, the city's lights reflecting in her eyes. She was free not just from David, but from doubt. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning.